antigens. And again, that can produce a different immune response. So when it comes to testing, when we're doing indirect testing, you might not be able to pick up an active infection because you have these different forms. So those pictures over there are kind of nice. So the upper left picture, that's actually the spiral form. The picture on the upper right, those are also spirochetes with a couple blebs. I'll talk about those in a second. The picture in the lower left-hand corner, those are round bodies. And the picture in the lower right corner, that is a biofilm-like aggregate of Borrelia bacteria.
Weird.
So here's the paper that I was referring to. It's the pleomorphic forms of Borrelia burgdorferi induce distinct immune responses. And so you can see there, those are all the different forms of Borrelia that have been classified. You have the spirochete form that we're all very familiar with. It kind of cruises amongst tissues. We have a bleb form, a round body form, which actually lacks a cell wall. And then we have the biofilm-like colonies as well. So down at the bottom in the red, spirochetes and round bodies, they both have completely different protein expression, and so therefore they have different antigenic properties. And you can actually see this in an immune response. So you actually elicit a different immune response depending on which type of form of Borrelia you have. So the results of the paper, they indicate that round bodies have the ability to induce distinct immune responses compared to spirochetes, and that could actually be associated with different clinical symptoms.
Where did it go? In my nail? I mean, it's...
So let's just talk quickly about the immune system. I don't want to go too in depth. The most important thing that I want you to get out of this is when we do testing for Borrelia,
there it is, and there's the hair that's like wrapped around my finger.
Indirect tests that again look at your antibody response to an infection. So this image, it shows a spirochete in the upper
now, shouldn't that hair still be wrapped around there?
And you can see that there are these cells called B cells producing these antibodies. They look like those Y-shaped things. So those are considered immunoglobulins, and that's what a lot of the testing is picking up. So when you have an infection, you're making antibodies against this infection, and so that's what a lot of the lab testing is looking for. Are you making an immune response against an infection? So what's interesting, if you've had any biology class, any immunology class, if you've gone to medical school, nursing school, you learn that IgM, which is kind of this acute phase antibody, is only produced within the first month of the infection, and then goes away and seroconverts into an IgG antibody. So we'll be talking about this a little bit later, but what I want you to realize is that the textbooks, I hate to say it, but some of them are wrong. There's a lot of literature out there showing that IgM can actually be produced throughout the entire course of an infection. This has not only been demonstrated in Borrelia, it's also been demonstrated in Pseudomonas infections and mycobacteria. So keep in the back of your mind, if ever you go to a doctor and they say, oh, you have a positive IgM response, that should only be positive during the first month of infection. If after that month it's still there, that's a false positive, so you therefore don't have this infection. So just keep that in mind, that it just doesn't play this way. These infections did not read the textbook. So let's move on. So another interesting part about the immune response is women and men actually elicit different immune responses. There have been some recent studies looking at vaccinations as well. So women and men respond differently to vaccines. So it's interesting. So women may develop a more significant symptoms than men because they produce more cytokines or more inflammatory mediators. But men, though they don't have as many symptoms, they actually will produce more positive serology. So for example, you may have a very sick woman who's very symptomatic, and her testing may be completely negative because she's not producing this huge immunoglobulin response. Whereas in men, you may have a man who doesn't have very many symptoms, but his serology may be quite positive. The reason being, it all comes back to women have to be pregnant, and you don't want to attack the fetus. All right, so let's get into testing for Borrelia. And again, those of you with Morgellons disease, we know that Lyme disease is one of the underlying infections that we've seen a lot of. So most practitioners will want to test you for Lyme disease or Borrelia if you present with Morgellons disease. So going back to the different types of testing, so we have direct testing and indirect testing. Direct testing is looking for, can we look for that actual bacteria? Can we find the bacteria in this sample?